When Muhammad Ashraf Ghani became the president of Afghanistan, he carried a grand vision for his country. He wanted to build a modern, stable, and strong nation. President Ghani was known for being a scholar and an expert in state building, and he believed that big changes were needed to fix the deep-rooted problems facing Afghanistan. His plan was to use presidential decrees, which are official orders that have the force of law, to push through these important reforms quickly. He aimed to tackle corruption, improve how the government worked, and make the country's political system more fair and representative for all its people, from the bustling cities to the remote villages. Ghani's ambitious agenda involved many different areas of governance, from the economy to security. However, some of his most significant reform efforts remained incomplete, leaving a complicated legacy behind. 3 key examples stand out: his attempt to form a High Council for National Reconciliation to guide peace talks, his project to reform the country's election laws, and his sweeping overhaul of provincial leadership. Each of these initiatives was started with the goal of creating a better future, but each one ran into major obstacles. These challenges showed just how difficult it was to bring about change in a country with a long history of conflict and political division. The story of these unfinished decrees is a tale of high hopes meeting harsh realities. President Ghani often used his authority to issue these orders without waiting for long debates in parliament, hoping to speed up the process of reform. He felt that Afghanistan did not have the luxury of time and that decisive action was essential for progress. This approach, however, often created new problems. Other powerful political leaders and community representatives felt that they were being excluded from important decisions that would shape the future of their nation. This led to disagreements and power struggles that slowed down, and in some cases completely stopped, the very reforms Ghani wanted to implement. Understanding why these decrees were left unfinished is crucial to understanding the political landscape of Afghanistan during Ghani's presidency. It was not simply a matter of having good ideas, it was about getting everyone to agree on them. The president's top-down method of making decisions clashed with the complex web of Afghan politics, where consensus among different ethnic and political groups is incredibly important. The resistance he faced was not just about political rivalry, it was also about ensuring that all voices, including those of smaller minority groups, were heard and respected in the process of building a new Afghanistan for everyone. One of the most critical tasks during President Ghani's final years in office was establishing a lasting peace. To lead this effort, a special body called the High Council for National Reconciliation was created. In June 2020, President Ghani issued a decree appointing 46 members to this important council. His intention was to bring together influential figures from across the political spectrum to create a united front for negotiating with the Taliban. The council was meant to be the main authority guiding the peace process, representing the diverse interests of the Afghan people in these historic talks. This was a crucial step towards ending decades of war. However, the president's decree immediately caused a major political dispute. The chairman of the council, Abdullah, who was also Ghani's political rival in a power-sharing agreement, publicly rejected the appointments. Dr. Abdullah argued that their agreement gave him, not the president, the authority to form the council in consultation with other leaders. This public disagreement between the country's 2 most powerful figures created confusion and undermined the council's credibility before it could even begin its work. Several prominent figures named in the decree, including former President Hamid Karzai, also refused to accept their appointments, signaling a deep division at the highest levels of government. The problems with the decree went beyond the power struggle between Ghani and Abdullah. Many groups felt that they had been unfairly left out. For example, representatives from the Pashai ethnic minority protested that they had no one on the council to speak for them. This raised serious questions about whether the council was truly inclusive and could represent all Afghans. A body designed to create national unity was, from its very beginning, a source of national division. The presidential palace first insisted the list was final, but later suggested changes might be made, leaving the council's final membership in a state of uncertainty. This failure to form a unified and accepted council had serious consequences. The infighting and lack of consensus among Afghan leaders weakened their position in the peace negotiations. Instead of presenting a strong united front, they appeared divided and disorganized. The High Council for National Reconciliation, which was intended to be a powerful symbol of national unity and purpose, became a symbol of the political fractures that had long plagued the country. The decree that was meant to build a foundation for peace ended up exposing the very cracks that made a lasting peace so difficult to achieve. Another one of President Ghani's major reform goals was to fix Afghanistan's troubled election system. Past elections had been marred by accusations of fraud and disorganization, and Ghani wanted to restore public trust in the democratic process. In 2016, he issued a decree to create a new election law. This law aimed to establish a new, more independent election commission and a separate body to handle complaints. By taking this action, the president bypassed parliament, hoping to avoid long delays and political arguments. The goal was to create a legal framework that would ensure future elections were free, fair, and transparent for all citizens. Despite these good intentions, the new law left the most difficult and controversial issue unresolved. The decree did not decide how to change the country's voting system. For years, Afghanistan had used a complex system where people voted for individual candidates in large, multi-member provinces. Many reformers wanted to switch to smaller, single-member constituencies, believing this would make representatives more accountable to their local communities. The new law simply instructed the new election commission to study this issue and report back, pushing the final, difficult decision to a later date. This meant the core problem of the electoral system was not actually solved. This delay was a significant problem because the question of how to draw electoral districts was deeply tied to ethnic politics. Changing the boundaries could shift the balance of power between different ethnic groups, making it a highly sensitive and contentious issue. Political leaders worried that redrawing the map could reduce their group's influence in parliament. There were also concerns about how a new system would affect the constitutionally required number of seats for women. By deferring the decision, the decree risked sparking new political battles and ensured that this critical piece of the reform would remain unfinished for the foreseeable future. Ultimately, the attempt to reform the electoral law was only a partial success. While new commissions were formed, the fundamental structure of the voting system remained a subject of intense debate. The decree created the appearance of progress, but it failed to address the underlying political challenges that had weakened previous elections. The unfinished nature of this reform meant that the system remained vulnerable to the same kinds of disputes and accusations of unfairness that it was supposed to fix. It was another example of a bold plan that was unable to overcome the deep political divisions within the country. Soon after he took office in 2014, President Ghani launched a major initiative to reform how Afghanistan's 34 provinces were governed. He saw provincial leadership as a key area where corruption was widespread and government services were failing. To signal a clean break from the past, he took the drastic step of dismissing all provincial governors and replacing them with temporary acting officials. This was meant to be the first step in a larger plan to appoint new permanent governors who were capable and committed to his reform agenda. The president's goal was to install a new generation of leaders who would bring stability and effective governance to the provinces. However, the process of appointing permanent replacements proved to be incredibly slow and was never fully completed. While some new governors were eventually appointed, like the one for Farah province in early 2015, many provinces were left with acting governors for extended periods. This created a great deal of uncertainty and instability. Acting governors often lacked the full authority of a permanent appointee, making it difficult for them to make important decisions or implement long-term plans. This administrative limbo weakened local government and left many provincial offices in a state of dysfunction, undermining the very goal of the reform. The long delays were caused by the same political challenges that plagued Ghani's other decrees. Appointing a governor was not just an administrative decision, it was a deeply political one. Different political strongmen and ethnic groups all wanted to have their preferred candidates in these powerful positions. President Ghani had to navigate these competing interests, and finding a candidate who was both qualified and politically acceptable to everyone was extremely difficult. As a result, the process stalled, and the ambitious overhaul of provincial governance remained an unfinished project throughout his presidency, leaving a patchwork of permanent and temporary leaders across the country. Today, the legacy of these unfinished decrees is clear. They highlight the immense difficulty of implementing systemic reforms in a fragile state with deep political and ethnic divisions. The half-formed Reconciliation Council, the partially reformed election law, and the incomplete overhaul of provincial governors all contributed to a sense of political instability. These unresolved issues created power vacuums and ongoing disputes that weakened the government's ability to function effectively. For Afghanistan, this story is a powerful reminder that even the best-laid plans for reform can falter when they fail to build the broad political consensus needed to turn vision into reality.